My name is Crum Derr, and I have put together a video ethnography. My main goal or topic of this video is to try to find evidence of Malcolm Knowles' assumptions. So we'll go ahead and get started with our very first interview. All the participants were asked the same questions, and then based on their answers, I tried to find the evidence for the assumptions. So can you tell us your name?
I'm Carol Schopper.
And where do you work?
I teach at Siceville Middle School. I'm a FACS teacher.
Okay. So could you maybe tell me one class that you didn't really enjoy, or one that you thought you didn't get very much out of?
I particularly do not like the online classes due to the fact that I find them very frustrating since I am not considered tech savvy, and the technology has to be so advanced, so I always felt I was far behind than the other classmates, whether it's 5 steps behind trying to learn the process or the material. So I always felt I needed to keep up in that aspect.
So did you think the technology was a stumbling block for you?
Very much a stumbling block, and okay. I will not be taking any more online classes because of it. My last class I was so frustrated at that I just could not get through, and if it wasn't for some friends at work and my personal life that are very tech savvy, I would never have gotten through that class.
All right. So I think we might have found the first one. The one that I want to talk about, Knowles' assumption that says the most potent motivations are internal rather than external. I think adult learners are motivated. They will finish a class no matter what kind of frustrations they're experiencing. You'll notice in Carol's video, she says, I asked for help, I went and found some people that knew how to do it so that I could still succeed in the class. And I think we might find that happening in some other interviews as well.
Ernie Crum used to be the senior manager, CSX pricing department, in charge of the databases. Now retired since 2004. It starts off with all sorts of programming explanations that said nothing. And what it turned out to be was called bit manipulation. Now, this was never explained during the class. This is something you learn as you did it. And I don't know anyone in this whole wide world that wouldn't find it easier to hit another letter on the computer rather than going back and saying, okay, let's change 4 zeros and a 1 to 4 zeros and a 2, or 001XB instead of 00147XB. It just is worthless.
Did you ever ask the instructor why you had...
I asked the instructor many times, and he just kept saying, it's called bit manipulation. Like that's supposed to be an explanation. But at the end of the course, I realized what it was.
So there was never really a good explanation given to you by the teacher about why you had to do it?
No, and sometimes I wonder if even he knew why. He was paid to instruct, and that's all he did. He had a manual, and we turned the pages, and that would be it.
Did you find this frustrating?
Oh, beyond belief. The frustration just went up through the roof. And I wasn't the only one. I took the class, I paid the money, I got a terrifically good grade, and I've never used it. And I don't know anybody that ever would.
So in that last interview, Bernie was exhibiting that he does have internal motivation despite all those frustrations he had with the instructor, with the actual material. He still managed to get a quote-unquote terrifically good grade. So he did have the motivation to finish, to try to succeed despite any other frustrations he was experiencing. He did touch upon one of Knowles' assumptions, though. Besides that, he talks about wanting to know why he had to learn to do it. He thought it was silly, and the instructor could not give him any good reason as to why they need to learn this material, which brings us to Knowles' assumption that adult learners need to know why they need to learn something.
Hi, my name's Kelly Crum. I have an undergraduate degree in economics from Towson State, and I have a graduate degree from Johns Hopkins in economics. I left Black & Decker, my full-time position there, to run a bed and breakfast. I've been running the bed and breakfast for 12 years now. And about, I guess, 2 years ago, after running this bed and breakfast for 10 years, I went to a bed and breakfast seminar. And this seminar was taught by a guy who was more of somebody that taught theory versus practical ways of doing things. And I sat in a seminar for 2 hours, and all he did was go on and on about how he believed things worked and had no clue as to how it really worked. He had no practical experience. He had never run a bed and breakfast, and it just drove me crazy listening to him say these things that none were true, how to react toward customers, how to do different things within the bed and breakfast. So that was very frustrating for me.
Did you think it was a waste of time?
Oh my God. At 2 hours wasted, I just wanted to hit him when I got done talking, or when he got done talking, because none of the stuff he said was true or relevant. He had no respect for us who had been running the bed and breakfast for however many years.
Do you think you might have learned more had you just turned to the person next to you?
Yes, definitely. It would have been a lot better if we were talking to one another instead of listening.
One thing to note about Kelly's interview is that she says it was a complete waste of 2 hours. But I kind of get the feeling that she knew it was a waste of time early on, but yet she sat there and finished the whole thing, which shows, as the other ones, that adult learners will stick it out. They will stay despite frustrations, despite any external forces. They stay, they stick with classes, and they try to get the work done. What I'm trying to raise the question about is, if frustration levels are very high and they remain high throughout a learning experience, do learners really take that information and make meaning out of it? Or, like Kelly says, do they just chalk it up as a waste of time? Hi, can you tell us your name?
Sure. I'm Jeannie Mayo, and I'm the media specialist at Sykesville Middle School. And I took online classes for my graduate degree for library science back in the early 2000s at McDaniel University. Favorite class as an adult learner? I'd probably have to say it was my young adult literature class. It was a fabulous class, and I think primarily what I enjoyed about it was the give and take discussion that I had with my peers. It was a lot of sharing the different pieces of literature, as well as some of the projects we did. I still remember things now, almost 14 years later, about different pieces of literature or stories that I'm still using today. So it was a great class.
Excellent. How would you say the teacher was in that class? Were they more of a facilitator, or did they kind of lead you along, or?
She was a facilitator. She guided the discussion. She presented the assignments and the expectations, and then kind of sent us on our own to meet the guidelines of what we had to do. And it was almost as if when we were coming together as a class, it was, okay, well, what have you done? Share what you've done. And I liked that. It gave the responsibility to everybody to, do it and learn from it, and on we go.
The classes that I get the most out of are ones where I meet on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, and I get to talk one-on-one with the instructor and my classmates, and we can collaborate on projects, whether it be on-site or off-site.
And my favorite class that I took in all of my schooling was called Interpersonal Relationships, and it was an elective I took about relationships with people. And the reason I liked that class was because it was team building, it was working in a group, it was about music and dealing with people. There was no textbook involved.
So in those last few interviews, I had asked the participants about a class that they liked, a class that they thought they got a lot out of, and a theme did emerge. That was, they liked to interact with each other. They liked it when the teacher was more of a facilitator and they could learn from each other, they could share experiences, narratives. And that brings us to the last assumption we're going to talk about today. An adult accumulates a growing reservoir of experience, which is a rich source of learning. So by allowing students to interact with each other and learn from each other, that assumption is being met. So there are 6 assumptions by Malcolm Knowles. I have only been able to find evidence to support 4 of them in these interviews.